All right, yes, welcome in again to another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast, Picks and Chatter edition. This is our NCAA Picks of the Week for week number 8. The matchups for Saturday, October 20th in college football. With me in studio, I've got Tony 1 and Tony 2. You can rank them how you'd like them in order of the way you like to listen to their picks or fade their picks. But I'm going to let them both say hello this morning. Tony, what's up?
Yo, what's going on? Don't sound like deaf today, so.
Yeah, that's a huge plus. You're already coming in 1 point ahead.
What's going on? Yeah, things looking up. We had an interesting up and down week last week, but certainly still a lot of positive there, and a lot of very good matchups again this week. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, most definitely. The top 25 schedule reads like a who's who at this week because there are a few matchups that could really start to determine playoff seedings. And I know that obviously when you think about the playoff, most recognizably is obviously the first four because, well, at the end of the year, those are the four that get in. But I would say numbers 5 through 15 really shouldn't be disappointed if and when those first, obviously rankings come out, that you're sitting outside those four because there's a lot of football left to be played.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Could have a few stirrups this week in the top 15. I don't see a lot of potential, but there's still some chances. So,
well, we saw how vulnerable some of the top teams, as you mentioned, were. I mean, Georgia lost relatively easily to a good LSU team, but they were beaten badly at the point of attack and just got run over pretty much in that game. So I think that can really show you how things can change so dramatically. Maybe as Token said, a couple of the top teams probably look pretty safe, but everybody else pretty much up for grabs for the next few weeks.
I'd say it's a good assessment by both of you on that. Let's before we dive in, let's thank our sponsors. We are brought to you by 12-Ounce Sports Radio. We are on your radio every Monday, every Thursday, every Saturday, and every Sunday of each week. Saturday and Sunday are our Picks and Chatter podcast, which is what you're listening to right now. Saturday mornings is our NCAA. Sunday mornings, NFL, and Mondays is our NFL recap. And Thursdays, we kind of just talk about whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
Good assessment there, Token.
Yeah, I mean, right now a lot of baseball playoffs going on, but after that we'll see what happens.
It's a great time of the year.
Maybe switch over to hockey. So
it really is. It's one of my favorite times of the year, if not my favorite. I like when all the sports are pretty much
rocking.
All going. Yeah, it's one of those great times, and even the PGA Tour, which I know a lot of people don't pay attention to at this time, has a lot of fun events out in Asia that actually have some really good fields this year. So really everything across the board.
Yeah, even the Champions Tour has the Dom Energy Classic this week, which is always an interesting one.
Wow, nice.
Even tennis is a thing. We could go down the line.
We could go down the line. We are pretty much junkies.
So yeah, I want to thank 12-Ounce Sports Radio. I want to thank VGK Pop Sockets, and I want to thank ChaiPoker.com for their continued support. We also want to thank you guys for listening in. Hopefully our picks have been making you money. Whether you tail us or fade us, that choice is yours. But we're here to have a good time, put a little money on the games, and sit back and have a beer on Saturdays. So without further ado, it is Saturday morning. We are going to get started here on the picks. Don't want to start out with too big of a matchup in the 9 a.m. Pacific region, but it is definitely a key game in the Big 12, and that's Oklahoma at TCU in Fort Worth. A TCU team that's been a roller coaster this year. Most of the time when we see them on the national stage, it's been, it's been a struggling TCU team. But this team is no slouch. Oklahoma coming in off of a Red River rivalry loss and a bye week. The line currently sits right now live. Oh, man, I lost it. It refreshed. I hate when the thing refreshes.
About 8, I think.
Yeah, the line sits currently at Oklahoma -8. Live total 61.5. Oklahoma 5-1. Only one game on the road. They did win that. 2-4 against the spread. They did lose that game against the spread on the road. Current action 63% toward the Sooners against a 3-3 TCU team. 2-4 against the spread.
You brought up pretty much the exact thing I was going to talk about, which is they've only had one true road game so far this year. So it's really interesting to see how they're going to show up, not only after loss, but after their second road game and after bye week 2. So there's a lot of unknown, I think, there with Oklahoma, and that gets me into the point of where I'm going here, that I think there's a little bit too much least from my end, that we don't know. TCU played one of the worst games I've ever seen them play last week. Now they've had bigger losses in maybe the last 3 or 4 years, but they just played so obscenely badly on both sides of the ball and turned it over and did everything that a Gary Patterson team virtually doesn't do. So I just don't know how they're going to rebound in this game. This is probably the best or second best opponent they've played this year. Maybe the third best if you really think that Texas is better than Oklahoma, although that's, I think, still kind of arguable to me. And I just don't know enough. The line seems about right, and I don't have much here. Even on a lean basis, I think I'm just going to sit back and start out with a nice strong coffee and have a good time watching this one.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the Sooners have won 17 consecutive, what they call true road games, non-neutral site, which is currently the longest active streak in the country. 5 of the last 7 meetings, well, essentially since TCU has joined the Big 12, in this matchup have been decided by 7 points or less. The exceptions to that rule are last year, where Oklahoma blew them out twice.
Yes, you're right about that. This one, I'm not going to take a side on this one. I'm actually going to lean towards taking the over in this one. I think you're going to see both offenses produce some big totals. I'm thinking like a 35-30 kind of game. So probably lean towards TCU to cover, but not sure about that. So.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the trend doesn't favor you there. In their 9 meetings as Big 12 opponents, the under is 7-2. So Token Tony likes to buck the trend in this spot. Excuse me. Apologies. I got a frog in my throat. Not a horned frog. I hope not.
Wow.
That just wrote itself right there. I don't know. I mean,
the catalyst, ladies and gentlemen.
Hashtag. An interesting stat I saw, which may or may not have a bearing in this game, is under Gary Patterson, the TCU Horned Frogs are 111-5 when allowing 17 points or fewer. And obviously one of those 5 is that loss to Texas Tech. Is Texas Tech's defense still good enough to contain, I guess, is the right word, but Kyler Murray, I mean, this is a team averaging almost 9 yards a play.
I would assumingly say yes, just because the defense is built for quarterbacks and for offenses like this. So Patterson seems to recruit a little bit differently than a lot of the other coaches in the region, where he actually looks for more undersized players at across the board at all positions, including on the D-line, and is looking for speed and lateral quickness more than anything else. So I think he understands and respects the fact of how good these offenses are, these spread offenses in the Big 12. So theoretically, yes. I do want to say yes that it is good enough, but
well, that's all we can speak in right now is theoretical.
No, but usually I can feel like I have a little more confidence after I've probably seen them play 5 or 6 times this year. But they've been so up and down, and not only inconsistent, but they've played so badly in a couple of spots that it's very strange. It is the weirdest Patterson team I've ever seen. So again, yes, in theory, but unsure because, as you said, Murray has been spectacular this year. In fact, his numbers rival Baker Mayfield's from last year, too. If not, he's actually slightly more efficient. So it's really interesting from that perspective. And that's, again, another one of the reasons we can keep ratcheting them up, that this game seems very tough for me.
And you got 2 teams token off of, I don't want to say prime time because the Oklahoma game was obviously early, but I would say televised games. The last time we saw both these teams is off of a loss. Oklahoma's obviously the better team on paper, better team talent-wise, but are we looking at a public situation where we're captured by the fact that what we know of TCU is not what we see of TCU? And like you said, you leaned towards TCU on the total. Does it feel like it's just kind of a public play on Oklahoma, where you a situation where TCU, who's kind of beaten down, kicked into the gutter, still has enough talent to stay with an Oklahoma team at home?
I believe they can, but will they? I mean, that's the hard question in my mind.
Well, that's usually how sports betting goes.
Go either way.
Yeah. That's how sports betting goes.
I think what really relies on that is how TCU does not cause havoc with turnovers as well as penalties. I think if TCU plays a clean game, they cover and could easily backdoor to the cover too. So, I mean, that's one thing to keep in mind too. So,
I feel like with your hashtag, you ever listen to the Jim Rome show? I don't listen to it anymore. I don't even know if it's on radio, but have you?
I have
Jim
heard
Rome
him,
was
but
starting.
I haven't heard him speak in years now. But yes, I knew who he is.
In regards to your, it could go either way. I feel like Jim Rome had a slogan. At least he may still have a slogan. Have a take, don't suck. Pick a side.
This one I'm going to take Oklahoma.
Now, he literally just switched his pick.
Only took a few minutes.
Only
Okay.
took a few minutes. All right, let's move on. That's a great start to the show. There's a lot of games in this 9 a.m. Pacific slot that have good implications, good matchups. Let's move into the Big Ten. Maryland at Iowa. Iowa now currently in the top 25, facing a Maryland team that you believe is trending downward.
I do, although I was significantly incorrect with my going out there on a limb and taking Rutgers. at the money
Bold
line.
prediction, small prediction.
Fair enough. But it's one of those examples that I think Maryland can run so hot and cold that in these spots it's good. It's another interesting thing to take a money line here and there, even if it's a long weighted plus money line. It's an important thing to remember. But moving on to this game, this one to me spells significantly slow paced and arduous, and two very good defense. In fact, as Maryland has increasingly, I think, been up and down, their defense has actually gotten better. It's been mostly their offense.
Yeah, line currently Iowa minus 10 in this spot. The total opened at 50. Bet live down to 45. Iowa receiving 60% of the action. 5-1, 3-1 at home. Always strong at home are the Hawkeyes. Maryland's still 4-2, like you said. It may be an interesting spot where the season may start to get tedious and long for them. A slow game, though. I kind of like your theory on that.
I'm in the middle of that total somewhere. So, yeah, I saw it down to 45. I picked it up at 47.5.
Okay.
I do have the under there. It is actually one of my favorite plays of the week. And if you want to click on over to the VegasSquares.com website right now in the Betting for an Edge section, you will see in the Power 5 conference article that this will be the featured Big Ten game of the picks from Tony Johnson. And it's, to me, all spells to slow and a 20-17 type of victory by someone. I'm not quite sure who, but that's where I'm at.
So, hashtag plug, by the way. A nice plug on that.
Yep.
So, finding the edge in the Power 5, I know that's a pretty read article among people who to visit the Vegas Squares podcast. How's that going, by the way?
It's a lot of fun. I wanted to do
Not
it.
well, then.
Oh, record-wise, you're talking about?
Yeah, how's the
we're 500 right now.
500.
Totally 500. But I thought you were talking more in just a metaphysical kind of sense. But
even with that, I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept I never really thought about when you're betting. Hey, look, you want to watch across all games, want to get a feel for all of college football, betting one of each of the Power 5.
Sure.
And maybe throw in an American Conference game there.
I could, but the whole goal of that was because the majority of my bets actually do come from the lower conferences.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of what I bet on are not in the Power 5 conferences, but I wanted to make it so we're going to have some fans out there that are not going to be familiar with some of the lower conferences and are frankly not going to care, and that's
or
totally
not going to
fine.
want to bet on them.
Yeah, they don't want to bet on them. They just want to watch all the good teams play in prime time, as they should, and that's a great thing too. I have nothing against that.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I was going at it, and I knew it would be a big challenge, because you can't bet on 2 Big Ten games. You have to have only one, and then one on each conference. And I thought it was just going to be fascinating, entertaining. So while, of course, our goal is to be winning and doing great things, it was more an exercise in just trying to nail myself down to one really good pick per conference each week. And there's only 2 Big 12 games this week, so that's why this has kind of even been more fun this week. At least that's the way I took it.
Yeah, Token, you got Maryland 4-2 against the spread, 1-1 on the road. Against the spread, Iowa is 3-1 at home, 5-1 total. In this game, head-to-head, there are no trends because I believe this is the first or second matchup in the Big Ten between these two teams.
Yeah, it should be an interesting one for sure. Iowa at home is always tough to beat. I believe they do win, but they do not cover. I like Maryland to cover in this one. And as Tony said, very strong on the total this week as well. I like the under as well, even at 45 in this spot.
Wow.
I believe final will be like 21-14. Iowa probably with the victory.
Interesting thoughts. Yeah, like you said, big defensive battle. Iowa's got one of the best defenses in the Big Ten, if not in the NCAA, and Maryland's no slouch.
Both strong rush defenses. That is they're hallmarked by their great rush defenses, and both these teams run the ball well. So I think that's where the give is to me.
Staying in the Big Ten, Illinois at Wisconsin, number 23 Wisconsin, another roller coaster program that is calling Tony right now to tell him to pick them. Pick me. Pick
the Badgers.
Oh, man. What are we talking about? Oh, Illinois, Wisconsin. I'm already thrown. Line currently is Wisconsin 24.5. Total opened up at 52.5. Currently up to 57. Some jumps today in the NCAA, I'll tell you that. Even action right now, 50-50. You got a 3-3 Illinois team. You got a 4-2 Wisconsin team who's coming off of getting blown out. I would call it a blowout to Michigan.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, even though it hung close for a little bit, but
you knew who was winning that game pretty early on. Yep.
Yeah, 0-4 at home against the spread are the Badgers. That's not good.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think they make it this week 0-5. I don't see them covering 24.5 in this spot. I think Illinois keeps it marginally close, loses by 3 scores, but just enough to cover their total. So.
Wisconsin 5-1 against the spread last 6 games following a straight-up loss, and 4-1 last 5 after scoring less than 20. Head-to-head, the over is 4-1 in these meetings, which seems weird for teams that Illinois is not a good offense, and Wisconsin, while they've been able to run the ball, they are just definitely a slow-paced offense. There's no questioning that.
No doubt. Yeah, they're usually in the lower tier of plays per game by the end of the year. In the last many years, depending on whatever coach they've had, it hasn't really mattered.
Whatever coach, whatever quarterback, whatever running back's back there.
That's right, about the same offense. So I looked at this thing. I guess the first thing I'll note is I think virtually for all of the games that are being played in the upper Midwest and all the way down through and even into the Southeast I should say on Saturday, there's going to be some pretty bad weather and a lot of wind for a lot of these games. And this is one of those where the wind seems to be very significant. So it looks like there's going to be some gusts up to 30, 35 miles an hour in this game. This should be a pretty ugly game as well. You're going to see that also in the previous game we talked about too. And to me, the total, I think, moved up based on the previous trend that you had mentioned and a few other things that people were looking at. I think also the thought is that Wisconsin is just going to roll these guys pretty hard and score a lot of points. I actually am going the totally other way here. I caught it at 58.5 before it went back down again, and I think it's going to continue to go down, probably down into the 55-ish range by game time. I like the under here for a couple of reasons. Illinois comes in playing their worst game by far last week, and my guess is they will improve immensely off of that one, and their rushing defense has been phenomenal this year for the most part. It really has been top-notch, one of the top ones in the Big Ten statistically, and this could be a spot where, based on the weather and not being able to throw the ball all that well, that I think it's going to be a bit predictable, and this will be relatively low scoring. Don't think Illinois has a chance to win, nothing like that, but in the 30-7 type of range is my guess for this game.
Yeah, I was looking at it too. It feels like a low-scoring blowout, which sounds like a weird thing to say.
No,
but I can see. I mean, in Wisconsin terms, my Wisconsin blowouts are usually 30-7. Those are the kind of blowouts that Wisconsin's more used to. So it's going to hover probably right around the number, but I think the under, like you said, is a strong play in this matchup because I don't know if Illinois can score on Wisconsin's defense. So it'll be an interesting play in that spot. I think you're right about that. Auburn at Ole Miss. Auburn. Whew. Last time we saw them, Tennessee got a hold of them hardcore. Did we miss on that game? Like, harder than any game I can imagine remembering about any podcast?
I believe so, yeah.
I've never swung and missed at a game.
Did one of you guys have a total, or did you?
I had a total. It went
okay,
over.
That's why
we both had the total. It went over. He had Auburn 15.5. And
yeah.
I mean, I said there was. I mean, everything in my analysis of Tennessee was just light the program on fire, and they come out and beat Auburn.
It was a surprise, for sure.
Yeah. Nevertheless, Auburn has to return going on the road against Ole Miss, a team who had some fits from Arkansas last week. Let's discuss with the line currently. Man, this thing refreshes too much. The line currently at Auburn -3.5, total 63.5. a 4-3 Auburn team who I talk about this with people. We talked about this, I believe, last week. What do they have to play for?
Well, yeah, and that was the nice lead into that game as before we discussed it last week was the playing for thing, and I think I tried to bring that down a little bit into the sense that it's still an SEC conference game and they're going to be up for it, but it looked like they weren't.
Yeah.
It looked like they were not prepared, not ready to go, and as you said, they were beaten handily from the beginning.
In their own backyard.
Yeah, they only ended up losing by single digits, but it really was a lot worse than the final score. And
given the state of Tennessee's program and the talent level,
agreed.
Even a single-digit loss,
Brutal.
You could almost double that.
Totally agree with that. And all of these reasons and all of this kind of lends to the fact of, to make a similar point, I guess, to the Oklahoma game that we hit earlier, that I just don't have a good idea of what's going to happen. When things go awry and you can't really predict a team at all. Auburn has just been, I guess, more bad than good easily, but still they've had some games where they have dominated some opponents, and I just don't know if this is going to be the one. Is this the one where Ole Miss has a game like they did against Alabama and they can't move the ball? Or is it going to look like they've, the last 4 or 5 weeks besides that, where they're moving the ball up and down and scoring 60 points on everybody? It's just, I don't know. I don't know which one it is. I guess it's probably somewhere in the middle based on the line and the total, but to me, I have no idea, so I'm on a strict no play here.
Yeah, I'm not touching the spread on this game. I actually might lean towards the under in this play. I see it open at 61.5. It's up to 63.5. Going against all the trends in this spot.
That's where I'd be too. If I had to be somewhere, yep.
For Mississippi, over 7-0 and 1 in the last 8 games in October, as well as 12-3 for Mississippi in the last 15 home games, as well as head-to-head overs the trend. Last 4 games, 4-0.
So you like a lot of points in this spot?
No, I like the under.
Oh, you like the under? Okay, so you're bucking all the trends. What you're
I'm
saying?
bucking all the trends. Yep.
Did I fall asleep for a couple minutes or something?
Seems like it.
Yeah. Tigers are 8-3 against the spread in their last 11 meetings in Mississippi. I think the number's low enough that this offense is too good. I believe they're going to right the ship. They do have nothing to play for, but Gus Malzahn has something to play for. In the SEC, you don't lose 4 games with this. You're not supposed to lose 4 games, and they're going to. They're going to lose to Alabama more than likely. So you don't lose 5. You're not supposed to lose 5 with this kind of program in Auburn. And I think Gus Malzahn, even though he just signed that fat contract,
7-year extension. What can they do?
Well, the SEC country is that with Texas, so the only people that can sign a guy, cut him tomorrow, and pay the rest of that contract.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. He did sign a fat contract, and like you said, now you see me, but maybe now you don't. But he's not going to get fired in the first year.
Oh no way!
But I believe this line, if I can catch catch it at back down to 3, you never know with fucking SEC fans. They're crazy, dude. If the boosters want you gone bad enough, they're willing to pay for you. You'll be gone. But that's not going to happen here. But 2-5 against the spread. I think they make it 3-5. I know we've discussed their road struggles, but Auburn will get it right if I can get it at -3. I think I still feel confident this could be a situation where Auburn wins the game by probably 10, but it's, not having to sweat the hook always makes you feel a little bit better, at least in my opinion. All right, well, before we talk about the big one, any other 9 o'clock matchups, 9:20, 9:30 matchups that you can see in your arsenal of picks? I can see both of you with sheets full of numbers and totals and lots of stuff. Anything going on with you? I want to hold on to the big guy, but let's see if there's anything else in your arsenal there.
I actually like the Virginia-Duke game in this spot. I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup, and I would lean towards Virginia covering the 7 points as the dog. So
that is one of the games that I was on as well. I'm a little bit on a different side. I'm playing more towards where I've been going here. Is the under here is another play that I'm a fan of. I think you kind of knew where I was going.
Yep.
This is going to be a thing today, and wind is almost one of the worst things for scoring that you can have, especially in college football. In the NFL, everything is different, but in college football, and with these 2 rush defenses, again, another just stout 2 rush defenses, 2 of maybe the best in the ACC, and I like this one being low scoring and slow and horrendous for the most part. And Don't know who's going to win the game. I'd probably be taking the points if I had to, especially getting that many. That is a little bit of a surprise. But Duke has been so solid. That's probably why that number is so high. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think Duke wins this game 21-17, something around that spot. So it does go pretty under. So, if not even lower. So.
Yes. Are we going on to the Cincinnati Temple game?
Well, that wasn't my big game. You had it starred on your sheet, so that's why I was curious. So.
Yeah.
Another game I like is Cincinnati cracking the top 25 for the first time this season. I look at this game as an AAC fan and a UFC. I said it. That's twice in 2 podcasts. Must not be a fan anymore. A UCF fan. I look at a spot where I need Cincinnati to win this game because that sets up a showdown with Cincinnati and UCF later on in the season for big implications, where, as Tony Johnson shakes his head here and discussed.
I always do.
Call it what you want. Call it what you want. There's a guy on Twitter, actually, he's actually a college football writer, actually has votes, obviously not with the committee, but he has
Texas
votes.
Tech? Don Williams?
Is that who? No. I'll have to find it. But he announced his Final Four, or initial 4, UCF number 4.
It's the opposite. Okay, there's another guy that has them ranked 24th, and I agree.
Fuck that guy.
Okay, fair enough.
So how do we turn this guy's mic down?
You better turn it all the way down.
I'll just sit there. Yeah. But nevertheless, whether you agree with it, disagree with it, you are a P5 ball washer like Tony Johnson on my left.
I'm not at all. I'm just a guy that watches the games and analyzes things. That's it.
Well, speaking of watching the games, I almost nailed that Memphis money line last week. Not that I'm proud of it, but
you were dead on with that game.
It took a big comeback from UFC. God damn it! UCF. I apologize.
UC in the playoff.
I apologize, nice fans. Yeah. John Jones is quarterback.
He'd be a tough guy to bring down.
Yeah, he would, especially with those sharp elbows.
Bring back Johnny Hendricks and all
those
that.
12-6 elbows. Nobody's bringing him down.
All right, Cincinnati at Temple. When this line first came out, it gives me pause for concern. Again, I told you I'm rooting for Cincinnati, but Temple at home, 3.5-point favorite, essentially saying that on a neutral field they're equal partners. I mean, Temple 4-3, 2-2 against the spread, but they are 5-2 against the spread. They are 2-2 at home against a team in Cincinnati that may not have wins that everybody recognizes, but I think there's some strong victories with them. 5-1 against the spread.
Definitely, and I'm super excited about this game, just in being able to watch it, and I love where the ACC is going. I know you had briefly mentioned. Yeah, AAC.
ACC is going down.
That's true. The ACC is certainly having a rough year, but this conference has a lot of really strong players now, and these two have kind of risen from a spot where I think we didn't expect. Temple was quite good a couple of years ago with Matt Rule, and then after he left, everyone assumed they would take a step back, and they have absolutely not done that. They've been spectacular, and Cincinnati with Luke Fickell has gotten things right also relatively quickly, and this is a great one. So this is a head-scratcher of a line, and with head-scratcher lines, and then when things kind of align and make a little sense to me, I love to be on the side where you're scratching it. And so I am on a rare favorite here. Don't bet a lot of favorites, but I like Temple. Whatever the line is fine. I did get it at 3. I think it has gone down to 3 for the most part, which is good. But
yeah, some spots still 3.5. But
the only thing I would worry about is probably the most important offensive player in this game, Temple's running back, Raquel Armstead, is still technically a question mark. A couple of lead writers in the Cincinnati, both the Cincinnati area and in Philadelphia, say that he is going to play, that he's a strong probable. I am not convinced per se, but and the backup is significantly worse. But I really do believe that a team that's had the lead in every single game this year in Temple is going to be a very, very, very tough team to beat, especially at home, and they have shown that the last few weeks.
Fair enough. I mean, you got a team in Cincinnati right now, bowl eligible for the first time since 2015. That's a couple of years. I mean, they've been in the dumpster of the AAC since moving conferences, but this year their defense is just the stranglehold. And if you have a guy, like you said, like Armstead, who is battling an ankle injury, what does that mean for this defense in preparing for a guy who may not be able to be as effective, and a quarterback who right now, as we see it, isn't the greatest passer, in my opinion.
No, there's definitely issues on offense. As you said, that is, I guess, if you had to find something, that would be it. But Cincinnati has also shown some spots of weakness on defense as well, which is the surprising thing. We expect a Luke Fickell team, being a defensive guy through all the Ohio State years, that's where they would be their bread and butter. But actually, it's been the opposite. They've done it on the offensive side of the ball, and they've run the ball beautifully this year with mostly a backup running back. Now they have two guys back there because everybody's healthy again, and it's been kind of fun to watch them just put up a lot of points on people, especially at UCLA back earlier in the year, which was a sight to behold. But as you mentioned, Temple's defense is, I believe, what wins this game and what does it. And I would not be terribly surprised if we see decently lopsided going into the latter part of the third into the fourth quarter. Temple with maybe a 2-touchdown plus lead, and Cincinnati having to try to come back without being able to run the ball is going to make it pretty difficult.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on that. As the trend is this week, I like the under.
Okay.
Yeah, as well as I think the value on this one is Cincinnati money line. I think Cincinnati has enough to get it done. They control the pace of this game. Sure, you could probably get a good value, probably plus 115, plus 120 in this spot. Cincinnati probably wins by about a field goal, though, 20-17.
Pretty good. All right, we're on opposite sides. This is always good. I like it. Fantastic. Yeah, looking like plus 145 at a few spots. So that's not too bad, as you said. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, tough spot here. It's tough to take a play on this side because you're right. Temple looks pretty good. Cincinnati, they say they have holes on defense. I look at the total overall picture in this spot, giving up basically 13 points a game. They are third in the FBS. It's hard to take a play on the side of this. I'm going to take my rooting interest. I'd like Cincinnati to keep rolling. I will take Cincinnati money line. I think they win this game. Going into Temple, beating them, but I believe it will be a close game, so it's tough to really see on that spread. On that total like you're talking about. It's tough to see how much they're going to need to beat a Temple team. So give me the plus 145. I'll let my fandom take over in this one, and hopefully that the train keeps rolling over in Cincinnati. All right, let's talk about the big kahuna of the 9 a.m. slate. That's Michigan and Michigan State, number 6 versus number 24. Michigan State peeking its head back in the top 25 after a big victory against Penn State last week. Currently, the line is Michigan by a touchdown. Action pretty even. Michigan State, although they did win and cover last week, they are 2-4 against the spread, 0-3 at home. Total 41 in this spot. Against the Michigan team, who hasn't really been that great against the spread either, only 4-3, 0-2 on the road, 6-1 their total overall record. This is a spot where I think Shea Patterson, the transfer, has to be exactly what they expected, because they're going to be facing a team that not only is currently on a hot streak and a high, but in this series, in the Harbaugh era, has controlled them.
Yeah, pretty well. I think Shea, getting back to your point with Shea Patterson, he's been to be expected, yes, but he's completely underutilized for his skill set. And it is. I said this before, right after the transfer happened. The fit makes no sense to me at all, based on having a kind of odd and strange NFL-style, pro-style offense, which is very, very difficult to work well now in these days of college football. And bringing in Shea Patterson, whose skill set doesn't resemble anything like that for the NFL. Again, he's a very fine player, and I have no idea what his plans to do at the next level, but it certainly won't be at quarterback. He just doesn't have it. His release is low and slow, and he doesn't have a great arm, but he moves incredibly well. And he reads the defense, especially in like an RPO set like he did last year at Ole Miss, beautifully. I mean, he's one of the best at it. It was actually unbelievable to watch. And they hardly run any plays like that anymore this year. So I still feel like he's extremely underutilized, and Michigan's getting through this mostly on defense, and their defense has been so stifling, especially their rush defense and everybody up front. And it's been tough sledding for a lot of teams, and will be no different here with Michigan State. This one, to me, it looks like points are going to be at a total premium. So in a game where the total, I believe, is 41 now, And before the line came out, I was really ready to hit an under here, but I wanted it. I was thinking like 46, 47, 48, something like that. I was really confident, felt good. And then the sheet came out, and it was 41.5. I think it opened at, or 41. It doesn't really matter. I was like, oh my, wow. So this is pretty scary. But again, you have a game where it's 41, where there's not that many points, and you can get 7, on a team that's a legit team. That's usually the side I'm going to want to be on. It's not going to be a play for me at the window, but if I had to be on, as you like to say, the gun to the head, I would take Michigan State with the points, but I'm certainly going to enjoy watching this one.
Well, I mean, the trend would head your way there. The Wolverines 0-5 against the spread in the last 5 meetings in East Lansing. In this series, the last 11 times that they've played, the Wolverines overall are 1-10 against the spread. Against the Spartans. In this spot, though, I know that L.J. Scott has been kind of injured all year. They're saying he may play at this point. Does he control the line at all as far as moving it a point, half point to a point, one way or the other? Obviously, they're not expecting him to play, but if he does play, grabbing it at 7, how much of a kind of a plus for that is no pun intended, obviously plus, but
wouldn't matter much to me. I don't know where tokens feel on this, but to me it wouldn't move the line. It might, as you said, actually move the line, maybe half a point, I don't know, but to me it doesn't really affect all that much in my world.
No, I agree with that analysis. I don't think it moves it. Maybe if it does, maybe a half a point in the spot. I don't see it going a full point, though.
Well, Token, your boys, you are a Michigan State guy. They've won 8 out of the last 10 meetings in this series straight up, but the Wolverines did win the last time in East Lansing in 2016. What's your spot here?
I think Michigan's going to win outright. I believe Spartan's going to cover, so I think they lose by roughly a field goal, maybe 4 points. I lean towards the under in this one as well. I'm fading all the trends with that.
You talked about, this game, capping it. You said you expected the total to open up around 48 in this spot.
That was an internal goal, really, more than anything else.
Well, the way I look at it in the spot, actually, I had a real strong lean on this game. Actually, may turn into a play here. I think I actually like a teaser in this spot. Actually, a 2-team 7-point teaser, Michigan money line, effectively, because it's a 7-point game, and taking that total under 48 at that point. It's a spot where you can move the line in the favor of your personal goal and get a team who I think is better. Although Michigan State has had the number of Michigan, this team is better than a lot of the Michigan teams that are basically Brady Hoke and Rich Rodriguez
agreed, yeah.
recruiting classes.
More like Brady Choke.
If you're telling me I get the better talented team at face value with a number like you like, points being at a premium, I think this game probably finishes somewhere around 24-14, which would cover the original spread. But just to be safe, pay a little juice and move the line.
It's interesting. I don't think about it in the sense of parlays and teasers for the most part, but it's one of those plays in the book that you need to utilize every once in a while.
I'm not a huge fan of parlays, but I like to move a line in my favor, especially if I see it. If I want to make a play,
right.
If I see it. I did it last week with the Monday night game with the Packers and 49ers ended up working out for me. I ended up taking a 7-point teaser and the over, and with a 2.5-point Packer spread, it ended up working out. Considering they were down all game, it felt pretty good. So
yeah, and the over was good by the first quarter.
The over was good by the time I blinked. I think by the time I changed the channel to the game, I think the over was good at that point. But I think this spot, like you said, points are usually at a premium in this head-to-head matchup already. I mean, last year the game was 14-10 in the Big House.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so. You're right. It's going to be a tough battle. Both teams play pretty damn good defense. Both teams know each other pretty well from a coaching staff standpoint. I think a teaser in that spot, getting Michigan at even money, or excuse me,
I didn't think about that.
At the money line, and getting a total that you felt comfortable with, or like you said, a personal goal.
Yep.
I think that's a good spot right there to look at. So, so that's going to actually in our podcast here wrap up the 9 a.m. slate of games. We are getting started here in about 15, 20 minutes. if you're listening on 12-ounce Sports Radio. Let's move into the later slate of games, the 11:30s, the 12:30 slate of games right now. Alabama falls into this slate right here. Number 1, Alabama at Tennessee. We were really low on Tennessee last week, and they proved us wrong. But caveat emptor, we probably don't want to get too high on the Vols this week. The line currently at Alabama minus 4 touchdowns. The over-under 57 currently live. Alabama is 4-3 against the spread, including 1-1 on the road. But they're a hard team, ATS. Again, it's easy to bet the Alabama money line when you can find one if you want to juice. But an ATS record of 4-3 doesn't really make me feel good about leaning one way or the other on the Crimson Tide.
I wouldn't think so. And a lot of those spreads have been just dead on, too. Out of the last 4 weeks, I think the final line has been within 1 or 2 points of what it actually was. So odds makers are quite good analyzing this team. And to me, it's not a terrible shock in that regard, just because we pretty much know what we're going to get with Alabama every week. We kind of have an idea now with the 2 quarterbacks and how the system is working. And the defense, while they've had a lot of injuries, are still playing like a generally relatively normal Alabama defense. Their numbers statistically are actually far down from where they usually are, both rushing and passing defense-wise, which might end up being a thing later on in the year when they play some big-time legit teams. But at this point, unfortunately, Tennessee is not one of those yet. It looks like Jeremy Pruitt is doing a really nice job, and this team is hopefully going along the right path to be one of those great SEC teams, hopefully in the near future. But at this point, not so much. And while, as you said, we want to celebrate the win that they had, which was impressive, and I think it's nice to see that program do something good, it's just this is going to be a bear of a game. And to me, the right before this is when I got lucky a little bit here. Before this thing came out, I was expecting it to be like 28, maybe 30 at the most. But it pretty much comes in from my vantage point of what it should be. The total seems very difficult to figure out. I don't have much of a play here. I hate to be that guy, but this is another one that's going to be hit by some significant wind, maybe a little bit of rain by time too. So that might throw a wrench into this thing a little bit, but I don't have anything.
So last 8 meetings in Knoxville, the Crimson Tide are 7-1, and the over is 5-1. But the weather could be a factor, like you're telling me, Token. What do you think about this game? I think the public money may sit close to Tennessee just based on prisoner of the moment and getting 4 touchdowns and potentially, depending on where you look at it, I see 28.5. But at the same time, if the weather holds, Alabama is a team that could put up 57, put that total up by themselves.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. In this spot, I would almost lean towards the over as well. I don't have a play on this game. I might do one of your classic teasers in this spot, though.
What would you tease that?
I'd probably take Alabama minus 2 touchdowns, do the 14-point teaser.
Oh, the 14.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. You got to put 14. You got to put 4 bets in that one. That's a tough one.
I wouldn't touch the total with the teaser either, though. Maybe the over 43, though.
Well, Michigan State plus 21, though. That sounds kind of nice. From the previous one.
You can move that both ways. You can move Michigan State to 21, and you can move Michigan to a 7-point dog.
Yeah.
Get a nice little middle there.
I'd prefer the Michigan State side.
You can use them both.
You can do them both.
Yeah.
They actually let you do it on the same ticket?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
You can have both sides of the. You can have both sides of the total too.
Yep.
Gotta love Billy Hill.
You do. That's true. That is.
That's convenient.
True.
Yeah.
So I think that the weather being a factor actually might play into Tennessee's ability to keep this game close. Like you're talking about, if it's going to be rainy, windy, that may be one of the best defenses against an Alabama offense is elements, because nobody who plays on the field yet has been able to play defense against them. In this spot, I think, like all the trends are leaning toward the over, everything's leaning toward the Crimson Tide. Obviously, the public money is on the Crimson Tide right now, or public action at 60%. I just don't know what to make of Alabama. I think I said on an earlier podcast I don't ever want to touch them again. But
gun to your head, which side would you take?
I'll tell you what, though, you're right. That 14-point teaser does sound pretty tasty to move Tennessee to a 43-point dog, or even Alabama to a 14-point favorite. I didn't really put too much stock in this game, but now I'm kind of intrigued on making I'm just going to make a play, not a bet, but I'm going to make a lean, and I'm going to take 28.5 points in this spot and hope the elements that Tony spoke of are actually a thing, because I don't know if
tornadoes all over the place.
I'm gonna wait till the right before, see what the weather report is in Knoxville, and either bet Tennessee or lay off.
Something out of a video game.
I'm basically
the kick's going up. Tornado coming through.
I'm basically gonna have picture-in-picture on a college football game on the left and the Weather Channel on the right. So give me 28.5. Caveat: wait until the start of the game. See if the elements that Tony Johnson has promised us.
No, I said it might.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. Tony Johnson has discussed show up. If they show up, I think that has the ability, because Alabama may not even want to put their team on the field. That they're going to get a couple of touchdowns ahead and play second strings.
And they have a bye next week too, so this could be a pretty low key game for Alabama as well.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, I believe LSU is on the docket next.
Right after the bye. That's right.
So yeah, not a look ahead for Alabama, because their talent alone affords them the ability to look ahead. But yeah, so I'm going to take 4 touchdowns in that spot again, with the caveat asterisks, however you want to look at that. All right, well let's dive no more into that game. Penn State at Indiana. Penn State falls all the way to 18 after their loss to Michigan State. They got to travel to an Indiana team that doesn't care what your record is, who you are, what your name is. They're going to come up against you and smack you in the mouth. Penn State at Indiana line currently, stupid refreshing thing, 14.5. Penn State is the favorite, obviously. That's a lot of points to lay on the road. Live total line is 61, 61.5. Indiana's not really good at covering the spread, but they have been able to show that they can keep in games.
True. Yeah, they really ran into a buzzsaw last week with Iowa. I think Iowa that's a little bit misleading, that final score, because Iowa has really been laying it on people the last few weeks. Ever since they lost to Wisconsin, they have been on point on both sides of the ball. So I'm a little bit, I'm not going to fault them a ton there. In fact, I don't think anybody wants to play Iowa right now. I mean, clearly Ohio State is still the cream of the crop in the conference, but I think Iowa is
just behind them.
I think they're just behind them. I think that a game against Michigan with them would be very fascinating right now for who may be the second best team at this current moment. But anyways, getting back to the game, as you said, this is a bit of a scary one if you're a Penn State backer, just because Indiana has been playing everybody tough this year. Again, spread or not, it doesn't really matter to me. They're staying in games, and now they're doing the opposite as well. When they're a favorite, they've also let some of these poorer teams also stay in the game too. Mm-hmm. I think they're kind of one of those teams.
They just want to be good TV.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But yeah, it's a good game. Good game all around. Penn State. I mean, I don't think we've seen this James Franklin team off of 2 losses yet. I don't have that in front of me, but I'm not quite sure they've had 2 losses in a row in his tenure. And this will be very interesting to see. Now, things are not all lost. It's not all over yet for them. Certainly, I think if they went out and they went out in convincing fashion, they should certainly get into a New Year's Day and a quality bowl, and it'll be a generally good season. I wouldn't say very successful to their standards, but certainly I wouldn't characterize this in the Auburn sense of where it looks like pretty much things are lost for this year. Mm-hmm. Penn State doesn't seem to feel that way, and they have a very, very positive sort of outlook on stuff. They're always top notch in that sense. I've been very, very impressed with the James Franklin regime so far, and I know all that getting said, get to a pick. Yeah, I know, but I wish I could grab one here. This looks like a game that would make a lot of sense, maybe in a couple spots, but I want to lay the points here with Penn State. I just don't know. 14.5 is tough. If I had to, the gun to the head, I would bet on Penn State, but I don't. I unfortunately don't have a realistic play on this one.
I actually do. I like Indiana in the spot. I think they don't win this game, but I think they keep it close and interesting. I think they lose by about a field goal, maybe a touchdown. And I also like the under as well.
Yep, that's another continuing good trend with the unders. If that makes some sense too, another game with excessive wind. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
I think Penn State's pissed. And like you said, James Franklin's not a guy that is going to allow his team to quit. And whether that falls, actually gets through to them, I don't know. We'll see. 14.5 points, a lot to lay. It clicks down to 2 touchdowns. Whether it does or it doesn't, I'm going to gamble.
You don't care.
I'm going to take Penn State in this spot. I think it's 38-20. They're going to put up a lot of points. T's dance around the total. I'm not going to look at the total in this spot, but they're 20-1 all time in this series. Head to head, the last 5 meetings, they are 4-0-1. I don't see a spot where Indiana. I think it's been a tough 3 weeks for Penn State football to lose to Ohio State, to stew on that loss to Ohio State, and then to lose to Michigan State.
The game they really should have won. They absolutely should have won that game. They had 3 or 4 spots there in the second half where they could have seemingly almost put it away. Michigan State missed field goals. It's just
if only they had Saquon Barkley. If he'd stayed one more year.
Well, yeah, the whole landscape would be very different. Yes.
Then the Browns would try and go 16 again, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think, like you said, James Franklin and this Penn State team still have something to fight for in this spot. And I will say that they fight hard this week.
We got a podcast face-off in this one. I like it.
Yeah, we do. We have one pick, Penn State versus Indiana in this spot.
Yep.
All right, Wake Forest, Florida State. Current line, Florida State minus 10 points. Action's pretty evenly split. Live line 59. Both teams 3-3. Both teams pretty terrible against the spread. 1-5 for the Demon Deacons and 2-4 for the Seminoles. In this spot, Florida State coming off a win. But I think that, like you said, Willie Taggart's really just looking to build a program right now, which sounds weird considering how much talent's in that cupboard. Thoughts?
I go with the trend this week, the under. It's actually a trend, though. Under 4-0 in the last 4 meetings and 5-1 in the last 6 meetings in Florida State. I believe they do not even come close to it. I believe it's pretty easy to win. I think Florida State wins this game. I think that number is spot on. I think 10's the right number in that spot, and Florida State wins by 10, 27-17.
There it is, right on it. I love it. I have nothing here.
You are nothing.
I know. I readily admit that in this juncture. Another game where we are going to see some of that weather continue to trickle in, and it actually should rain for, I think, a decent chunk of it. I don't know how much what that means. I have no idea. These two teams are just so up and down, and they can look absolutely abysmally awful, and then they can, in some weeks, actually look like the program is in great condition. I have no idea. I have no idea with these two teams. I don't know. Greg Dortch is back for Wake Forest, who is their best playmaker by far on the offensive side, so that helps, but I have no clue. Not at all. I would probably lean to take some points here, but I just don't know.
Yeah, it's really tough, like you said. I mean, you break this down to its basic fundamentals. You have Wake Forest, good offense, bad defense. You have Florida State, bad offense, good defense. So it's really like a battle of, Wake Forest can score, can't play defense. Florida State can't score, and they can play defense. Like you said, it's really tough to try to cap something along those lines. I have a lean. What I've seen of Wake Forest hasn't been great. What I've seen of Florida State, they're just more battle-tested, in my opinion, against tougher opponents. Obviously, they play pretty similar opponents, but I think Florida State has the ability, just has the ability to play a better football game at home against a team like Wake Forest. And over the course of this head-to-head matchup, Florida State's been the more dominant team. Obviously, that's easy to say. Obviously, I'm not even talking about the Bob Bowden era, but even the Jimbo era, they've been the better team. They've got better players. They got better talent. My hope is that they have focus, and that's always a problem, motivation and focus. You'd like to think in college football it's always there, but, they're kids. Sometimes it's not. I'm going to lean that I hope it is there. Florida State's 7-3 against the spread following a bye week last 10 years. I am going to take them to win by 2 touchdowns, cover the 10-point spread. Be something like, I don't know, 28-14, 28-10, something like that.
It's interesting. This is one, just looking briefly here. They do have 3 wins, and I think it looks actually, funny enough, unlikely they get to a bowl this year, but this would be a game they pretty much absolutely have to win. Because the games after this are Clemson, and then on the road at NC State, on the road at Notre Dame, and then home against 2 pretty good teams here, Boston College and Florida. So
yeah,
it's going to be tough.
If they want to make a bowl, they can't lose this one.
Cannot lose this one. You have to win this one. So
pretty much,
maybe there's a little bit of thought there. I don't know.
I mean, Taggart would have to sit on a 7-month hot seat, not firing hot seat, but he'd have to sit on a 7-month seat of answering a lot of questions if they miss a bowl game. They haven't missed a bowl game in, I don't know. I don't think I was alive.
It's been a long, long time. I don't know what's happened last year, but they got they added that extra game. But yeah, this is, even if they win this game, even if they get to 4 wins, I think it's going to be difficult to win 2 out of those last 5. I really do.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment.
They've been to 36 consecutive bowls.
So
wow.
They have been in a bowl game longer than I've been alive. So
wow, that is impressive. Wow, 36.
All right, let's talk about let's deep dive into these lower conferences a little bit. And one of the teams I like to talk about, that's FAU. That's not the team. Marshall's the team I like to talk about, but they're playing FAU at home in Huntington. Marshall's a 3-point dog on their home turf. Over under 62. Man, I butchered this whole thing.
This is no good.
Let's talk about a team I really like to talk about.
Let's
these
talk
podcasts.
about UFC again.
Let's talk about a team I like to talk about this podcast. That's Marshall Thundering Herd. Florida Atlantic and the Fighting Lane Kiffins are coming into Joan Edwards Stadium. FAU a 3-point favorite coming in. Live over under is 62.5. FAU is a team that everybody believed was going to run away with I like to call it CUSA, but it's Conference USA, as Tony Johnson, Token Tony's counterpart here across the table, is shaking his head as vigorously as he can.
You just said everybody, and that's all. I was just responding.
He's like, bitch, I ain't everybody. Well, I mean, it's easy to. I mean, yes, I've generalized. Obviously, there's probably people in the world that said they aren't going to, but I mean, they ran away with CUSA last year, and I know it's CUSA. I get it. You don't have to correct me. I'm sure somebody's listening on 12 ounce going, "It's CUSA, you fuck."
Very likely, yes.
They are 0-3 on the road this year. Obviously, one of those is to Oklahoma, and one of those is to UCF. But what do you like in this spot?
Well, first of all, I guess I'd like to lead with this because it brings a little bit of bias into account that one of the big future bets that I have is an under on season wins for Florida Atlantic, under 8.5. So I'm pretty much going to be against them in a consistent basis here as the weeks go on. So I try to handicap away from it as best as possible, just because I know that my inherent thought is I want them to lose. But anyways, getting into the actual part of the game, it's actually another tough matchup for Florida Atlantic, and this is one of the reasons. Well, I guess I was hoping before the season started that they were going to have a lot more difficult matchups this year than they had in the latter part of last year, just based on having to travel to tougher opponents this year, and also facing a little bit of a harder non-conference schedule headed by Oklahoma in Week 1. So this one is exactly that. Marshall has probably the best rush defense in Conference USA, at least statistically, and by watching them on the field, they are fantastic. So this it really puts a wrench into Florida Atlantic's offensive game plan. Their game plan with Kiffin has been mostly trying to run the ball with different players, especially through the quarterback, and wear you down as the game goes on. And they were able to do that very successfully last year, and this year it has not been the same case. Again, as you said, they've had some difficult games. Playing at Middle Tennessee and at UCF are just 2 tough spots. They really are. And even the game at home against Air Force is a non-conference, just tough schedule they didn't have last year. And while it was a home game and they did end up winning, Air Force is no joke. So this is just another tough game. Coming off of a bye helps a little bit, but for me, If I had to bet this one, I'd be betting, I know we're like a broken record here, but I'd be betting the under if there was a spot, just because I'm not exactly sure I fully trust Marshall as well offensively. Still having some quarterback issues there. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know exactly who's going to play or who isn't. I'm a fan of Thompson. I was a fan of him watching the spring game as well, and then he came in and played well last week too, which wasn't a big shock to probably your dad and a few of us as well if that follow the team. But I don't know. To me, it's an under. I'm not quite sure who's going to win, but this is a tough task for Florida Atlantic.
Yes, I believe if they do really want to win that conference. The CUSA, they have to win this game. As you said, I like the under in this spot. I am actually, I believe, sprinkle a little on the Marshall money line in this spot, too. I think I should get good value at right around plus 130 or so, I believe it's currently at.
Yeah, because if you look at the total, if you look at FAU's points against on the road, like you said, we've got 3 games, 2 against Oklahoma and UCF, where they were just beaten. I mean, UCF put up 48, and I think Oklahoma just scored another touchdown in that game. So that number is a little skewed as far as competition that they're playing down to at this point. I think their numbers probably a little more, if you adjust it for average, probably a little more around 22, 23. Both teams play halfway decent defense for college football. Both teams' offense is a little sputtery, I would say. Singletary is a pretty damn good running back for Florida Atlantic. But like you said, Marshall's working on a backup quarterback who played decently last week, but again, that was against Old Dominion, another one of our favorite teams to talk about.
We do. He played well, though. Give him some credit. He played pretty well.
I'd say he played pretty well. 1 and 2 are the herd at home. You're right. I know you're rooting against Florida Atlantic. I just think they're the better overall team in this spot, and to be getting 3 on a road tells me they're just a slightly better team. I'll take them. I'm going to take Florida State on the. God damn, I did it again. Florida Atlantic on. We just talked about Florida State. I shouldn't have gone Florida to Florida. I'm going to take Florida Atlantic on the money line in that spot. Not sure about the 3. It could be a close game. It could be more of a separation game, but just to be safe, Florida Atlantic on the money line would be my play in that spot. I'm going to take the strap off and bet that. Another team I really have a soft spot for, at least the last couple of weeks, is Utah State for reasons I believe we talked about off the air. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure if we talked about it on the podcast last week, but
we did. Yeah, it made it into the podcast.
Did it?
Yes.
Okay, so
yep. And you had mentioned that this gentleman you have not seen him yet.
I have not seen him yet.
Since,
You're correct.
There you go.
Utah State at Wyoming, another interesting Mountain West Conference matchup. Utah State receiving 70% of the action. They are a 15-point favorite, already bet up at 1.5 from the opening line. But the live total has gone down 2 points from 53.5 to 51.5. Wyoming has shown that it's not really been able to rebound from the loss of Josh Allen, who I know is one of Spike's favorite players in the NFL right now. Any thoughts on a spot here where Utah State may have a little bit of difficulty?
Not particularly. It's funny that they have actually covered every game this year, and all the games they've played have gone over, too. It's pretty rare that you see both of those aligned exactly through 6 games. So it's kind of, do you want to catch the falling knife, per se, to sort of use a stock market term that I know they like, is when a team is doing so well and just smashing everybody in sight, do you want to try to pick the spot, really, and catch the knife when it falls? No. Yeah, the answer for me is no. That seems like a difficult task and something that is almost a fool's errand. They're playing great in all facets of the game, both offensively and defensively. And in these contests where they're playing teams like they have with BYU, like they have with UNLV, teams that are just struggling offensively to find any sort of identity or to be worth anything. This is another one of those teams. I mean, Wyoming is a complete disaster on offense. I mean, total disaster. They couldn't even put points up against Hawaii last week. It's just brutal. Or 2 weeks ago, whatever that was. So I don't know. My lean here is to actually just lay the points. I don't like betting on favorites for the most part, especially. I mean, this is just so weird. This big of a favorite on the road.
On the road, over 2 touchdowns.
It just seems so wrong. But I can tell you one thing. I'm not trying to figure out when they're actually going to give up this streak of covering and overs. I don't know when it's going to happen. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm not going to try to be that guy. So if I had to, again, I hate to be the, I want to be the guy making plays here, and we got many more coming up, which is good. But this one, my lean is to Utah State laying the points, but that's all I got.
I'm going to lay the favorite on this one. I'm going to make this as one of my smaller plays of the week. I believe they keep up the trend and make it 7-0 against the spread.
Okay.
Total, I'm not too big on this one, but I would lean possibly towards the under, but not a play in my book in that one. So
we talked about those aligned teasers and aligned parlays that you had mentioned before, and I know you say Aaron, you bet more teasers in this sense, and I actually do the exact opposite.
Then straight bets, or then just in general?
No, just we were talking about, we're all basing everything off of straight bets, but then you brought up the fact of bringing a teaser into a play where it makes a whole lot of sense, especially in a really low-scoring game where two teams know each other really well, and you can actually use it to your advantage. Mm-hmm. I try to use I do the opposite. I try to use parlays to my advantage when possible in the same game. If I have a really good idea that if the only way that they can stay in a game, the only way that I think this game can really go for them is if they score a lot, if they have to throw the ball 70 times or things like that, then I can find an area where we can
find a little edge.
Yeah, exactly. So this one is if there's anybody out there, and this would be great if there was, that has taken Utah State and the over in a parlay. They are 6 for 6 this year. It's just kind of an awesome thing to me. I don't know why.
I want to meet the guy that's rolled that.
Yeah, just kept with it. Like,
yeah, usually people that do parlays in the same game usually lay the favorite, which I'm sure Utah State's been.
Yep.
What, 4 times this year?
Well, they were a dog at BYU. And they were a dog at Michigan State. I know those for a fact.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 times probably.
Just those 2? That's it. They've been a heavy favorite a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah.
Covered. Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people lay the favorite and take the over in the spot.
They backdoored against UNLV, that late touchdown with a minute left.
That's right.
Yeah.
They did. Also against Air Force, too.
Did they?
That was 9 or 9.5, and they won by 10, and it was kind of close.
Yeah, I would say they were the heavy favorite against TNTC. I'm guessing that's Tennessee
Catholic University or something.
Tennessee Tech.
Tennessee Tech.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And they won that game 73-12. So
a well-watched game.
I don't know the number. But I believe they covered the
47-point favorites they were in that game.
Was that on ESPN, the Ocho?
The Ocho. I love the
Might have been on the Nueve.
What a game. 73-12.
Yeah. So your boys. You want to talk about Liberty a little bit?
We can if you'd like. That's an FCS opponent this week.
Yeah, Idaho State, the Bengal Cats, right? Or the Tigers, or whatever they are.
The Vandals.
Oh, that's
Idaho.
right.
That's Idaho. No,
who's the one? Yeah. Who's the one that plays in that little barn? That's Idaho.
Oh, the Kibbe Dome? That's Idaho.
That's Idaho. So I don't know jack shit about Idaho State, but apparently I didn't know much about Idaho.
I know only a little, very little.
Idaho State Bengals. That's what they are.
You know what's in Twin Falls, and that's about it.
They are 4-2. You did say they are an FBS opponent. They are 4-2. They lost to Cal, but they kept it relatively close in that matchup. Liberty again. If they are playing for conference alignment in the FBS, this is probably not a game they would like to lose in this spot.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I am that guy. I do follow the FCS relatively closely as well, just along with the FBS, because we have to have a resident junkie here. Otherwise, where would the show be? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting. I certainly haven't been able to watch them play, and I don't know a whole lot else besides that. But they are a typical high-flying team in the sense that you see on a weekly basis a lot of high totals and a lot of closer spreads, and they're just playing these back and forth, just shootouts with teams. So it's kind of tough to figure in that sense because Liberty is pretty much the exact same thing. They are a team that has played very little defense this year, and they've sort of given up early on in the fact of trying to have a relatively normal game plan, and instead Turner Gill has just turned up the juice early, and they are trying to run as many plays as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. Maybe because he knows that his defense doesn't really have much of a chance. So, in that sense, that's about all I can give the public out there for what they can expect in this game. Not that really anybody's, I don't think, going to be watching this one.
I'm waiting on bended knee for your pick.
Right. So the pick I'm going. Did you mark a total there? I can't remember what you had said.
Oh, let's just make up a total because I don't. There's not even lines for it.
It's $500,000.
Yeah, let's make up a total. Let's just make up a total. Have a fun little prop bet. 63
over. Instantaneously.
I was going to say 73.
So here, I'll read you the final scores of Idaho State's last three games: 44 to 37, 62 to 28, and a real barn burner, 56 to 42. So they are
unders in play.
Yeah, it's in play, all right. So, however, they have
it's going against the trends.
They have been actually quite good against some of the decent.
Well, in FBS play, they are 1-0 against the spread when they narrowly lost to Cal by 20 points. So
fair, but they also beat Northern Arizona at home, which is actually one of the better FCS teams in that area this year. It means a little something. So, yeah, I would take the over on our created line, but besides that, I think the game will be a little bit closer than expected. And if you can find something in the sense if they're going to get 20-something, I don't know. It'll open up if we're any Vegas locals out there at the stations or at the Stratosphere casinos, which are the Arizona Charlies as well. They'll have this line up on Saturday morning. I'm thinking plus 21 to 24 in that range. If you can get something like that, I'm going to want to be in the dog here.
Interesting. All right, Token. I served Tony up his silver platter with his Liberty. He loves Liberty.
I do like them, yes.
Now I'm going to serve you up one here. It's the Battle of the Mitten States, Western and Central. Central Michigan, 3.5-point favorite. Line currently 55. I will let you take it away.
Western Michigan going up to the area of Mount Pleasant, Michigan, where they're known for Soaring Eagle Casino, to believe it or not.
Nice.
A lot of Heartland Poker Tour as well as MSPT tournaments out there.
You played up there?
Yeah, I played up there a few times. Good action all the time, usually, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
My favorite, I've never been there. I don't even know where it is, but my favorite casino up there is called Firekeepers.
Firekeepers is pretty cool. That's in Battle Creek. That's about an hour from where I grew up.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
But Western Michigan, great offense, bad defense. Central Michigan, bad offense, probably just as bad defense.
Yes. I believe the play on this one, as the trend is this week, the under. Yes, I believe the win factor is definitely going to be a big one in this. I believe it will be close scoring. I believe Western Michigan does win by about 2 or 3 points. I believe they.
Western Michigan, wow, yeah. Road team 6-0 against the spread last 6.
No, I believe they win, but they do not cover. I believe Central Michigan, the Chippewas, do cover the 3, so 3.5.
Oh, that's fair enough. I'll just for a friendly prop bet, I'll take Western Michigan with the 3.5 points.
Oh, you got a deal.
Cool. Any love on your emus?
Not this week. I did like them last week. I didn't fire as hard as I wanted to. Eastern Michigan's been a weird team for me betting this year. I liked them big against Buffalo. They blew that game. And last week it was last week against Buffalo. I can't remember what game I bet. I think it was against,
too many games.
Yeah.
I'm such a DJ hashtag.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm betting tennis right now, believe it or not, so.
In-play tennis.
Yes.
That'll have the mark of a DJ. Doing a podcast, betting in-play tennis.
Oh, you're betting right now?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a parlay going and the in-play going.
That is the best thing I've heard today. By far.
Two teams that covered last week against some to our expectations, some against our expectations. Nebraska, still 0-6, but they got their first cover of the year against Northwestern. Minnesota, who I thought would get whitewashed by Ohio State, ended up keeping the game, relatively close. Minnesota and Nebraska come head-to-head right now at this point. Line currently, Nebraska as a favorite, 4 points, total 54. You got wide eyes.
I like this game a lot. I'm a Minnesota fan now just because of PJ Fleck. I've been following PJ for the last few years, and I think he's doing everything on the right side.
Michigan.
Yeah, he's a love-hate kind of guy. You seem to either really like him or you don't. And to me, PJ is what embodies, I think, what college football should be about. And not only that, but to get into the real stuff here, but he's an excellent coach, especially, I think, more so on the defensive side of the ball, which they've shown this year to have had a ton of injuries, and they're still in way development process out there, yet still keeping a lot of games close. The Maryland game was a bit of a head-scratcher a few weeks ago where they really got blown out in, but other than that, as you said, games have been close, and they've been very involved. This week, to me, is probably no different than that. The only thing that gives me pause is that they have to play Nebraska, who I think is very well documented at this point, has gotten, despite being 0-6, has gotten a lot better. Mm-hmm. And they certainly should have won at Northwestern last week, which you noted on, but they've also been playing better even in previous times before that. They not only in defensively, but they're passing the ball really well. So they've got a legit passing offense from a running quarterback, a freshman who we expected to not be able to do this, but his arm strength has been impressive to watch. So this guy, Adrian Martinez, is going to be a thing as the years go on, I believe. And Nebraska's certainly due and playing exceptionally well right now for what they have. Again, I still think the team is relatively weak talent-wise, and the scheming and the systems that they want to put into place, they don't have the right players for, certainly. But close game, tough game. I want to lean towards Nebraska, despite Minnesota's having a really good rush defense. I want to lean a little bit Nebraska here, but I think the line is perfect. I think it's a really, really good line. The odds makers, I think, have a good beat on both of these teams as well. So no play. My lean is Nebraska, though.
Yeah, I was, damn, you took it right out of my mouth. I was going to say Nebraska gets their first win of the year, and Scott Frost finally gets the monkey off his back. And I don't know if I like the spread, but Nebraska's money line's 185, 190 in some spots. I'll lay the juice. Nebraska gets the win.
I'm going to go the opposite way in this one, I think.
What a gopher.
Ooh.
I think I do like the Golden Gophers in this one. I believe Nebraska might get their first win this year. I don't feel confident.
Well, yeah, that's why you're betting Minnesota.
I don't feel confident in them.
How that works, yeah.
Yeah, that's usually how that goes.
In them winning
I'm going to take Minnesota
against...
money line, but I think Nebraska might win.
No. I actually like them plus the 4. I might sprinkle a little on the money line at plus 170, but I don't feel confident. I think Nebraska might win this one. Late second touchdown to cover the money line, but to lose by about 3. So I believe the final will be 27-24, something around those lines. Nebraska gets their first W of the year.
Wait, I'm confused. What did you just bet?
Minnesota plus the points.
Is that what you came up with?
Yes.
Minnesota plus 4, yes.
All right, cool. All right.
But your prediction is that Nebraska wins the game. So I mean that's a tight window you got there. So that's
It was just very confusing.
Yeah.
I believe Minnesota could win this game.
Okay.
But I like them to cover the points for sure.
Okay. Fair enough. I can work with that.
Scott Frost. All right.
I think he's done a pretty good job. I know this is so weird that nobody thinks this. I'm like the only one. I actually think he's done a really quality job.
I mean, look at what this team was last year and this team was this year. It's the same thing, and he's not doing any worse than what the guy you got fired.
Certainly not at all. And things.
Who was it? Was it Riley?
Mike Riley, yeah, who's already bolted for yet another job. He was on Jonathan Smith's crew out in Oregon State again, like offensive consulting basically. And now he's coaching one of the new Alliance football teams out there. I'm not sure which one it is, but somewhere in the new Alliance Football League, professional league that I guess is starting up in March or something like that. So.
Yeah. Speaking of, we talked about Utah State, the covering and over. Appalachian State's another one of those covering and over. They're 5-0 against the spread. The under finally just hit in their last game against Arkansas State. They are currently a 25.5-point favorite. Another 68 money line at this spot. I don't know much about the Ragin' Cajuns, the Louisiana Lafayette, except for my neighbor, who I live next door to, actually across the street from, is a Ragin' Cajun alumni, which you don't see that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I only noticed it because his license plate said like it's RGN, CGN, or CJN.
Okay.
And I'm like, that can only stand for one thing. So when I talked to him, he's a Raging Cajun alumni. So
That's kind of cool.
yeah, you just kind of some of those talking points you never really think you have to bring up. But again, 5-0 against the spread, 4-1, 2-0 at home, Appalachian State.
Not much here. This is a pretty good line. Appalachian has been a team that I really try to pride myself in analyzing teams well and following along closely, and I have not gotten them right this year. I absolutely have not. I can readily admit it. That
Which means you've bet against them 5 times.
Well, I mean, if I was to bet, yeah, it might have been 0-5, but I believe I've lost 1 or 2 bets on them. But that's not really the point to me. That's not it. It's the fact that I kind of I thought it was a pretty good idea of how the team was going to progress, and they just haven't done that. They have not made any mistakes offensively, playing so many young players. It's unbelievable to see. So at this point, I'm kind of very wary now because I know we're going to start seeing some big lines, and we are right here because Lafayette is not a cupcake in this conference. They are not one of the top conference teams, certainly, but they aren't a cupcake. But they have a lot of new staff and new people in place, too. I like what Billy Napier's doing, new coach there as well, but they're implementing a completely new system on offense. They were a run-first, kind of pro-style heavy team before, a lot of heavy packages, and now he's spreading it out and going crazy. So a lot of mixed results there, obviously, as you might expect, and just a tough team to handicap. And Appalachian State seemingly not making any mistakes on a weekly basis. I don't know what to do. No play from me.
I like the over in this one. I'm going against the trend this week. I believe both teams can put up those points as well as run pretty well with the ball. I think this total is just a little too low in my mind. I think they both easily put over 30 point, or Appalachian State easily puts over 40 in my mind, if not 50.
Wow.
And University of Louisiana Lafayette kind of keeps it marginally close, losing by about 3 touchdowns, so I'd probably lean towards Lafayette covering in this spot. Final score in my mind is 48-27.
Sneak it in.
Fair enough. All right, now we got some some top 25 matchups here in this time slot that we want to get to before we start talking about the late games. You guys want to jump on Clemson, North Carolina State, or you want to jump on Colorado, Washington first?
Colorado, Washington for me, if we can. But
That's cool with me.
Okay.
Rock and roll. You got the Huskies, who this line, I mean, good God. I mean, how far has the public and Vegas fallen on Colorado after getting beat by USC?
Didn't take long.
Yeah, holy shit. Washington is a 17.5-point favorite in a spot where, correct me if I'm wrong, they lost last week?
They did.
It's Oregon.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's a bad loss, but I mean, the team is 2-5 against the spread, 5-2 overall. I mean, Vegas is just baiting you to say blowout in this spot.
They are. I think that the injury factor for Colorado is the issue here, that they've got a lot of offensive players that are in the questionable range. So starting running back McMillian looks like he's a full-bore question mark here. Probably going to be a game-time decision, and he is significantly better than anything else they have in that spot as well. He's a transfer from Vatech, and he's been excellent this year. And probably more importantly, the outstanding receiver, Chenault, is probably doubtful.
Lashika or Laviska, or
Yeah.
how do you say that name?
Well, that's why I just call him Chenault. But
Shaniqua don't live here no more. Remember that song? Anybody remember that song?
I have no idea.
No?
No.
No?
All right.
Somebody listening knows that song.
I'm sure they
If
do.
they do know that song, I just say, you say, is Shaniqua there? And then somebody who's listening goes, hell no. Sorry. That's it. Go ahead.
Okay.
If you listen to our podcast, you know that song. Email Aaron at Vegas Squares.
Yeah. All I know is all I want you to say is Shaniqua there? We'll just leave it at that. Because somebody at
Somebody
home's
did, I'm
going,
sure, yeah.
hell no.
They're one of your guys, no question, or ladies. Absolutely.
All right. Shaniqua LaSault or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, getting back to it.
I messed you up.
No, it's fine. It's all good. He is a full question mark as well, although my intel here is that he's doubtful to play. So that's a big blow. They already have the coach's son, McIntyre, is already out for the game. He's a good wide receiver as well. and they're going to be pretty down in the depth chart at this point. They lost who many people thought was going to be their number one receiver for the good chunk of the season much earlier on in week 1 or 2. So it's pretty weak there. My guess is that's where this is stemming from, because I don't really understand why it's this big of a spread. McIntyre has always been a great coach, especially as an underdog and especially on the road too. So this is a weird thing, but. Again, what Washington team do we see? Do we see the team that has throttled people like BYU and really put it down, or are we going to see how they played in the second half against UCLA, where they let UCLA back in the game and only won by 7? Or are we going to see a spot where they could have put it away against Oregon? They had 2 great scoring chances at the end of the game against Oregon and couldn't do it, and missed a field goal. And it's been a tough road here for Washington. And while I think they're still a very good team, they haven't proved it. In a lot of these games. So until they do, and until that McIntyre proves to me that he can't do it with some minimal talent at times, which he has compared to Washington, I'm going to be taking the points here, and so I'll take Colorado with the points.
Yeah, the trend is the favorite is 6-0 in the last 6 meetings against the spread, and the Buffaloes head-to-head are 0-8 in their last 8 meetings against the spread.
Wow.
0-4 in Washington. But
I believe that trend will break. I believe Colorado will keep it marginally close. They lose by about 2 scores, maybe with a backdoor cover. So.
All right. Well, I don't have an official play on this, but I'll fade you guys. I think Washington has Pac-12 North implications, and at 5-2 right now, they're sitting right on the cusp of potentially falling out of those. I think with this spot, they're going to want to look to have a quality victory, and a team who is right on the borderline right now in top 25 play. If they can beat them while they're ranked. The Auburn loss obviously is starting to look worse and worse this year for Washington, so they're going to need sexy victories against Colorado, against Stanford, and against Washington State, against potentially what could be USC coming up in the title game, if they want to have a shot at playoffs, or if they want to have a shot at a New Year's Six bowl game.
Utah too.
Yeah, you're right. It could be Utah. So I'm going to say they come out with a big victory, 24-28. They're going to win this game by almost 4 touchdowns in this spot. So
wow.
Give me Washington, and I will even take the over because I think Colorado can put up some points.
Yeah, if you think you're going to win by 24, then you probably should be that might be a spot for a parlay. There you go.
There you go. Take one of Tony Johnson's parlays.
There it is. Absolutely. So you can be a true public guy and bet the favorite and the over.
Favorite and the over. Gotta love it.
Get it done. Okay.
Yeah, everybody loves that 2-team parlay that way.
Or I put these guys in my 14-point teaser and make them 3.5 and make it a 36 over.
Doesn't that feel a little uncomfortable though?
To tease somebody down to 3.5.
Yeah, against a McIntyre team, they're just tough.
Yeah,
they're tough.
But it's like you said, sometimes toughness, only goes so far. And talent matters.
Oh yeah.
And if it's not in the game,
sure.
if it's not in the game, it's not in the game.
I understand.
I mean, not to quote EA Sports.
That was pretty good. Nice plug.
It's in the game. It's in the game.
If it's not in the game, it's not in the game.
That's how they came up with that. Okay.
Yeah, they faded the one I just said.
Wow.
But I think this is a big game for Washington. Colorado, again, the injury factor. If they do play, like if Chanel plays and McMillan plays, that could change things.
Okay.
I think Browning is a better quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, if McMillan doesn't play, then you've got Gaskin, obviously the clear-cut better running back. Even if McMillan plays, I'm still at the edge on Gaskin. Defensively, this game could not be a defensive battle at all. So I'm going to lean Washington and the over, and maybe a little parlay action. I think it might be a good play. All right, well, here we are in the ACC. As much as we talk about the ACC being down, you have 2 undefeated teams right now, both in the top 15. North Carolina State traveling to Clemson. Not a far travel, but still a travel nonetheless. Both teams not really great against the spread. This is an interesting one, too. You talk about, 2 teams, Washington and Colorado, with a big 17-point spread. We got a 17.5-point spread here as well, over under 57.5. NC State's been quietly just racking up the wins. And Clemson's been in the news, obviously, for on-field play and off-field play. Nothing bad. I'm just that they've been in the tabloids. Right now, like I said, currently the line is 17.5 in favor of Clemson.
This is, I think, their first true test of the year. They've had some weaker opponents so far, and they've only played 5 games. They actually had the West Virginia game postponed, and they chose to, instead of trying to make up a game, well, a lot of teams haven't been making it up, but instead of finding a real opponent, they scheduled East Carolina at home on December 1st. So I was a little bit put down by that, although that game might have to be canceled if they continue this run and they end up in the ACC championship game, which would be on the same day. But nonetheless, I thought that was a pretty weak reschedule.
Sometimes you got to go with what's available.
Yeah, but there is. Yeah, fair enough. Certainly we're not privy to what.
I don't think the Crimson Tide were calling.
No, I wouldn't think so. I would not think so. But so the wins over Virginia, I was impressed with. They played very well, and Virginia, to me, is still a little bit of an underrated team. But Boston College, they got without A.J. Dillon, and that really changed the whole facet of the game. Boston College came back and actually ended up covering that game, only losing by about 5 or whatever it was. But that was just not the full Boston College experience there. And so this will be the full experience, and I think we might see a little bit of the chink in the armor, if you will, with NC State, which has always been stopping mobile quarterbacks and stopping quarterbacks that can get you in a dual threat way. Now, certainly I think the goal is to not have Trevor Lawrence getting out of the pocket all that much after the injury scare that he's already had. Mm-hmm. And he's obviously a throw-first guy anyway. I'm not trying to insinuate that. But that's really where we've seen the last couple of years with NC State where they've had some of these bad losses has been against quarterbacks that get outside of the pocket and have good run RPO sets, and they just can't stop them at the point of attack. So we'll see. Clemson's game plan will be fascinating here. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to the most, and to see how these two teams look after a bye, because certainly that can be very, very different when you have both teams that are coming off of some rest and decent wins and good wins themselves. So looking for a good game here. Another one of those uncomfortable spreads, which I think is really, really good. I certainly would have had. This is another game I was really focused on before the spreads came out of where I kind of wanted it to be. I was hoping for Clemson in the 10 to 12 kind of range, and it didn't end up being that. It ended up being 17 or so. So it was unfortunate, and to me, it's a no play. But if I'm going to think about taking a side, I would lay the points with Clemson at minus 17 because I really wanted to take them at minus 10 or 12 or something like that. So that would be my lean here, but just can't force it with the 17, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I'm actually the same with you. I think this would be a good game. NC State, like you said, we don't know what we have because the first test of the year they were supposed to have did get canceled. 17.5 is a lot of points. I like the fact that they're at home, having to lay those points. I think this spot could be, this could be a Clemson blowout. They're the better team overall, running back, defensively. Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. Finley's not bad. I'm not going to disrespect him at all, but NC State may be in uncharted territory. You're used to being the guy with nothing to lose, and effectively, maybe at this point they still are. But if the ACC wants a team in the playoff, they need Clemson to win this game. And I think Clemson has to show up, for lack of a better word. I just got a text to the picture showing the jackpot or the lottery's hit almost $1 billion at this point.
Oh, really?
And a buddy of mine goes out when it gets high, and we all collect into a pool. And I just got the picture, and the line's literally because you can't, obviously, there's no lottery in Nevada, right. So it's at State Line in California. And I think the line is all the way in back, from the State Line of Nevada all the way back here to the Excalibur. Wow. Just seeing the picture, it was just absurd.
Is this one in Prim or where?
Yeah, right by the State Line in Prim. It's that little. It looks like a little white castle.
Yeah, I've seen it for you.
While I don't expect to win that, I'll take Clemson as my lottery ticket, and I'll take them with the 17.5 points.
There you go.
I would lean the other way. I think NC State keeps it relatively close and might even lose by 2 scores, but I don't think they lose by the full 3. I think they actually get the over in this game, actually. I think it'll be a little higher scoring game. 37 to 27 is my prediction for the final.
37-27, huh? 37-27.
Yep.
Nice. You know. All right, where are we off to next? Aaron is studying the sheet right now, I think, trying to figure out where our next move is.
I think our next move is Houston and Navy. It's another interesting game in the American Athletic Conference that apparently Tony Johnson did not see coming.
I was an unlikely choice. I think anybody would have been like, all right, we just went with two real teams. Let's figure out, and then we did not.
These are real teams, too. We got a guy in Ed Oliver who's garnering Heisman talk. Let's not get crazy.
Oh, okay.
I think it's overblown, but he is nevertheless getting interested in Heisman, the candidacy. I don't think he has a shot in the world, but we have a team in University of Houston who represents the American Athletic Conference going into Navy, who's always a tough team, 2-4, but Houston's laying 11 points in this spot. You look confused. I'm sorry. Did I throw you a curveball?
You did, but that's okay. Navy has been hit hard by the injury bug on offense, and they have retooled their A-backs and quarterbacks and receivers and have jumbled everybody up so we don't even really know who's playing what position. Quarterback last year, Zach Abbey, has moved officially to wide receiver, which is basically a zero in the triple option offense. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Malcolm Perry has been off and on, injured to healthy. There should be their true starting quarterback who moved from the A-back last year, and now he has moved back to A-back because there's been 2 or 3 injuries to the A-backs, and they don't like some of the freshmen and sophomores that are coming up along the pipeline yet. So, unfortunately, all this stuff is sort of only known after the fact. I'm only speaking about this after we see what happens in the game because New Mataloa doesn't say anything to anybody. Not that he has to, not that, I care, but...
You need security clearance to know those things.
Probably
The injury
do.
report is top
Probably
flight. It's
do.
G14 classified.
So, what are we doing here? Now, in fairness to
You're
all
doing a
of
podcast,
this,
Tony. Where you been?
No, but I just don't know. How do we handicap this stuff? So I didn't know about this, like I don't think a lot of other people did. And I had Navy last week, and I didn't really feel all that good about that when I didn't recognize the players that were playing the positions that they're supposed to be playing in. So that wasn't an ideal spot. And then they got down 7-0 early, and we're down 7 pretty much the whole game. And it was like, well, I was only getting 7 points in the game, so I was like, well, I don't really know what to do with this. This is sort of uncomfortable. And they ended up only losing by 7. So it was a thankful push. It's one of those that you celebrate a push every once in a while, and I did. I celebrated that push. I absolutely did. And but now at this juncture, who the hell knows? I have no idea what's going on. The only thing that I can say is that Ed Oliver aside, Houston is a offensive juggernaut. They throttle people in all facets of the game. They have a completely unknown quarterback in Derek King, who is one of the best, if not the best dual-threat quarterback playing out there in the non-Power 5 right now. He is phenomenal. He is right up there with your boy Milton in all facets. Might even be a better passer than Milton, although Milton is an underrated passer. He might even be better. And fantastic athlete, makes really good decisions, and is in the perfect spot, perfect offense for him. I like a lot about what Major Applewhite has done with this team, and this one to me kind of looks like a scary thing. Playing Navy is always sort of scary, the triple option type of stuff. I actually think this one is one of those sort of polarizing games where Navy somehow gets it all together and they happen to hang around in the game and it's close throughout, or Houston wins by 30+ and they just throttle them, and this Ed Oliver-based run-stopping attack is that good, and Navy can't move the ball, and Houston scores on nearly every possession.
Yeah, gun to my head. In this spot, I'd take Navy plus the points. I'm not going to make a play on that. I do like the under in this spot, though. All the trends point that way.
Well, you look at it. Could this be a look-ahead game for Houston as well? After,
What, Navy? They're playing Notre Dame, right? After that?
Yeah, Navy's playing Notre Dame. This might be the last game Navy wins this year if they can take a shot at it. I think Navy's option will be semi-effective, which is good enough for me and what I want to bet here, because I looked at the total, and 60.5 is just baiting me to take the over, especially with the way that Houston can put up points. So I think Navy controls the clock effectively enough that they still get beat, but I think it's one of those blowout unders, the kind of 31, 35-10 kind of game. So I think I won't touch the spread because, like you're talking about, Navy could have effectiveness, especially at home, running the option. But I will just take the under in this because I feel like Vegas is baiting me to take the over with 60.5.
Yeah, this line's dropped by about 4. I do like the under. That's going to be one of my plays. I see like a 27-20 game, maybe give or take a few points either way. But
all right, let's move into the late night games because there's quite a few of them here with definitely some fun spots here. Quickly, want to go on Mississippi State and Louisiana State, and line currently LSU -6.5. And Tony looks lost again.
No. I was just looking at some sort of stuff here. I was taking in everything you guys are saying, and I was still hung up on Houston. They have not scored less than 41 points all year. This will be fun to watch. I'm just
fair enough.
I'm excited.
Fair enough.
Go on. Yes, you were talking about the LSU game.
LSU, Mississippi State. Mississippi State is still no slouch, even though they are a 4-2 record.
Yep.
Everybody's really high on LSU. Obviously, after the last thing they've seen is a big win against Georgia.
Yeah,
thoughts?
For sure. I'm one of the people that is high on Mississippi State. I know I've said that in maybe the couple previous podcasts, and it remains true. This is a good team that's well coached. They have another great fit. Unfortunately, when they lost their head coach last year to Florida, they found probably the right guy with Joe Moorhead, who was previously at Penn State, but he's been everywhere, and mostly in the South, and mostly in Texas too. So it was kind of weird, some guy coming from Penn State. It was the strange sort of Northeast connection, but he doesn't really have much of a Northeast connection. It was more of just with James Franklin. So this is pretty legit here, this team, and both of these teams pretty much do the same things well. They both run the ball very well. They got different quarterbacks that sort of do different things, but they both run it effectively right from the point of attack. And they both stop the run really well. These are probably two of the better rushing defenses certainly in the conference and overall. Alabama has not actually been ideal in that sense of what they usually are, but these two are very good, and that is probably why the total is so low. My initial thought was when the line came out, I think it opened at 7 in most places that I saw, that I wanted to. My first instinct was to get it at 7. I was like, yeah, but LSU, all this love for LSU is going to continue, and I'll be fine. I can wait. 7.5 seems very likely. That could be kind of fun, and that is not at all what happened. It went actually the other way, and it has maintained the other way very strongly. So I'm upset at myself for that. Obviously, half a point is not going to change the way I feel about it.
And you can always purchase it.
That's true.
Have you ever purchased a half a point? I've never done that.
I have, but not in a long time, because I do think it is a subpar play, especially with how much they charge in key points. If they charge you 10 cents to go from 16.5 to 17, a sort of a standard charge, and then they charge you sometimes 20 cents now to go from 1 on a key number on a 3 or a 7. That to me is way too much. And if you're considering buying a point in a game, then that to me shows that you're not confident enough in the game, that you probably shouldn't be betting it anyway. Because if you're really confident in +3, then you should be very confident in +2.5 or something like that.
I just feel like if I'm going to spend $1.20 on moving a point, I feel like I'd rather spend $1.30 on moving it 6 with a teaser.
Okay, that's one way to look at it.
I've never bought a point, so I don't really know. I mean, I've just never even thought about buying a point. I've more said, if for an extra 10 cents, I can move it a touchdown.
Sure. But then you have to add another team. That would be the only.
Well, sure. I mean, I'd usually add it to a team I already liked, and then I can just make them prettier.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. No, I've never done it that way, but I have bought a point before. I've done it twice on the -3.5 to go down to -3, I believe. This was years ago. I haven't done it recently. I'm not chastising anybody out there that buys points. I mean, that's fine. But it statistically, at least, it shows that it's not worth it in the long run based on how much they charge you to get that point now.
Right.
Yeah.
So. But anyways, my play for the game would be Mississippi State. I have not actually put the money down, and I'm not holding the ticket in the hand yet. But that is where I'm at least leaning towards, and where I feel pretty good about. There's also a chance that I'll let the game develop and watch the game play, and if LSU scores quickly or it kind of looks a little bit bleak for Mississippi State, I will jump all over it in Game 2. That actually might be where I go with this one, too.
Yeah, I like Mississippi State in the spot as well. I think at 6.5, I don't love it as much as I would have at 7, but I still like it. I think they have what it takes to keep it close, maybe even pull off the upset. I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised, but I think they lose by about a game-ending field goal or something. That sounds about right. So.
Fair enough. No official play for me on this one, so I don't like the line either way. Both teams are good. Both teams can keep it close. Mississippi State has also shown the ability to blow out teams that they weren't expected to blow out to over the last couple of years. So I'll just make a safe play and take LSU money line in the spot.
Despite the possible blowout of Mississippi State?
I'm just saying they have shown the ability to do it. It's more of a less likely situation.
I see. Gotcha.
But I think Mississippi State can keep it close, and if Mississippi State does cover 6.5, LSU still has a shot to win that game.
Gotcha.
All right. I'll hold on to that one because I know you'll love to talk about it later. But
Can't wait.
We love anything about Vanderbilt and Kentucky?
I do not, unless anybody else has anything.
I would lean towards the under, but that's about it I have on the game. So
Was that your Ed Orgeron impression?
Yeah.
That was pretty close, wasn't it?
That wasn't bad, actually. I was trying to figure out what that was, and you nailed it. That was good.
Either that or the guy from the Water Boy. I don't know why you might. Remember Water Boy?
I like that guy. Yeah.
I don't know why you might. You like to see homos naked? What? The guy likes to see homos naked. All right. We got 2 big games in the American Athletic before we wrap up with a couple big games. And, running close on time here. So let's touch on them both kind of at the same time.
Sure.
We have Central Florida and we have South Florida. Number 9, number 20. Central Florida's playing East Carolina. South Florida's playing Connecticut. Basically, they're scrimmaging this week. South Florida, 34-point favorites, total 69. UCF at East Carolina. A game where Eastern Carolina back in the day was probably gave UCF a little bit more fits, but right now they're not quite the program they were. But this game was opening ECU 25, now down to 21. Over-under total is 64. Both teams that are ranked, Central and South Florida, are getting the majority of the action on these.
Not a big shocker there. Those are the only 2 teams that are pretty well known in this sense, and at least on TV a fair amount of the time compared to the other 2. I'll go quickly here. I still think UCF is significantly overrated, and they're showing that statistically, especially on defense. But again, facing East Carolina, it's a train wreck. So I know. Well, I heard displeased, but that's just the reality is the reality.
Hey, yeah, whatever you gotta say.
I'll take East Carolina. UCF to win, but may not cover. I don't have a play per se. The only play that I could on these 2 games would be the USF and UConn over, which has opened and hung strong at 69. And while that is a huge number, and while I am a hardcore under guy, as we know, I think the value usually is on unders. This one, not so much. This has a lot of pace to it, and a week off with Charlie Strong teams. They are, I believe it's 12.5 points per game higher than their average. That he has all the way back through his Louisville days after a bye week, and I like that a lot, especially against this bad of a defense. Thinking 40-something to 30-something, or 40-something to maybe a high 20s, and I'll take the over.
I have a play on the UCF game. I believe they will win, they will cover, as well as the over in this spot. I believe they both put up enough points to do damage. UCF wins 45-20.
So a parlay play.
So they get there by a half a point.
By the hook, yep.
Leash. I'm with you on the same one. I think it's UCF in the over. I think UCF's got to make a statement right now. And like you said, I don't disagree with you, even though I may have shown displeasure in my one-fingered salute.
I'm used to that from over there.
A team like East Carolina, you got to beat them. You got to beat them hardcore. I think this game I think UCF's good for 55-60 in this spot. potential. I don't think they're going to get the over by themselves, but give me ECU with like 14 to 17 points, and UCF will finish the rest off. I like UCF plus 20, or excuse me, minus 21, and I like the over 64.5. USF, like I said, should have a field day with Connecticut. I don't know about the total, but I definitely think that every other team has been able to cover 34 points against Connecticut. So I think USF is no slouch, despite the fact that they are a rival of my team. I will give credit where credit's due. I'll say they'll cover the 34. A fun one would be put these two teams in a 14-point teaser. Take USF with the 20 and UCF with 7.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
I love those 14-point teasers.
I know you do.
I hit them quite frequently.
You do? Okay, fair enough. Well, if you're successful at it, then...
Well, you have to at minus 200 odds. You have to hit them.
Yeah. You have no choice.
Yeah. But to be able to move a line in college football for 2 touchdowns...
you should do some damage.
It's heavily advantageous.
So.
All right, Oregon at Washington State, another battle. This is game day right here, boys. Currently, Washington State, the 3-point favorite. Both teams 5-1. You got the Wazoo Cougars, who are 6-0 against the spread, against Oregon, who is 2-4 against the spread. Matchup action currently 60% on Oregon as the dog. This is going to be a fun one, I think. This is a game that kind of reminds me like Wazoo is kind of like North Carolina State. They just popped out of nowhere. You know, in my opinion, they've been quietly, I wouldn't say beating up on teams, but they've been quietly handling their business.
For sure. And this was a game where back and forth on the in the betting for an edge section that you've already visited on Vegas Squares. You've seen that this was not the game that we chose for the Pac-12, but it was the one that was just out. And so while it's still a play in regards to everything that's going on this week, just missed it for the article. But I do like Wazoo laying the points here. And there's a multitude of reasons for this. I was able to get it 2.5, which was pretty fortunate. But so the reasons are I think are pretty strong. Now Oregon has played so many of these games now, and it's just like it's hard to explain the fact that I feel like you have to have a drop off at some point, and this is one of those that while it's a game day game, and I understand that it doesn't carry the same weight as playing Washington, it doesn't carry the same weight as playing Stanford, and this is just not going to be one of those sexy teams that garners the main interest of what it is. So the game day thing probably does help a little bit in regards to motivation for these guys, but I still think it's going to be tough to get up over and over and over again that Oregon's had to do. And this is a team that has struggled pass defense-wise. This is the thing they have not addressed all that well this year. They struggled mightily last year on defending the pass, and this is the team that you can't do that against. He's the best quarterback in this game is actually the quarterback on Washington State. In my opinion, I know that is
bold statement.
That's unbelievable for a lot of people, but I actually don't think it's all that close. Minshew has been one of the better guys that Leach has had in his tenure all the way back from Texas Tech. He doesn't make mistakes. He's sound. He takes off when he needs to. He throws the ball way more than anybody else has. Really, really smart player. Unbelievable graduate transfer. He could be the third-string guy in Alabama, but instead he's leading a team that might be one of the best in the Pac-12. So I like Washington State, and this thing could get ugly as well. So I'm going with the minus 2.5, minus 3, and all the way up to minus 3.5, 4, whatever it moves to. You can go ahead and lay it.
Yeah, I like Wazoo State in this one as well. Ducks are 0-8 against the spread in their last 8 meetings head-to-head. I believe they make it 0-9.
Yeah, that's a big key trend that you look at it, because you look at the head-to-head and you're like, the dog is 7-1 in the last 8 meetings. But Oregon football, the dog in this fight has usually been the Cougars.
Yes.
So that's a very misleading trend, especially with the dog being Oregon in this spot. What you said, last 4 in Oregon State, they are 0-4 straight, or 0-4 against the spread, and 2-2 straight up against the Cougars. So I think we're all in consensus on here. This may be our first consensus pick.
It's rare.
Yeah.
It's rare for the pod. Wow. All right.
It's a consensus pick. I think Lee Corso is going to put on the Cougar helmet or mascot hat, which will be good. And the Washington State flag that flies around game day every place will finally make it home. So
there you go.
That'd be a fun one. Any other late matchups? You got Ohio State and Purdue. You got USC at Utah, Arizona at UCLA. Nevada at Hawaii, I know that's Nate Walls, one of his sexy teams. He loves Hawaii. Any of those games, we got a couple minutes here, jump out at you making plays on?
I'm leaning towards San Jose State against San Diego State. I think 27.5's enough where they cover. So
Nice. That's a weird one because San Diego State has actually looked pretty subpar in some games because they're playing a lot of younger players on both sides of the ball. They've had big injuries on offense too. The problem is they're playing one of the worst teams in all of FBS, so you don't really know what you're getting. But again, as you said, so many points. No, I'm totally with you there. Yeah. I don't hate the pick at all. It was just kind of an interesting game, and what a tough one to watch. I hope you're not sitting around on Saturday night watching that one, Token, because that's
chasing sweat.
That's a brutal one.
I'll be at work during that one.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll watch the Arizona UCLA game instead.
Okay.
And pick Arizona in that one. So
big point mover here. I'll just jump in quickly. Is Fresno and New Mexico opened up around 16, and that one as of yesterday, I don't have it in exactly right now. I can pull it up right here because it's not too far.
13.5.
It's down to 13.5. Okay, so yeah, it opened up around 16.5, 17 in a few spots, and it's down to 13.5. This one moved immensely early in the week. It moved about 3 points. They got a ton of money from a couple of supposed sharp players on New Mexico. So it was a spot for me when the sheet first came out that I was going to like New Mexico on, but then it moved a ton, and so I was like, oh, I guess I was sort of right. And it's remained here around the 13.5 range, and I'm not as confident in the 13.5. The reason for the move, I think, is that New Mexico has played really well this year on offense, and they've not just done it with the old weird triple option that Bob Davies installed, but they're throwing the ball a lot more, and they're utilizing the quarterback a lot more, and the quarterback's strength, and they're able to move him out of the pocket, and they've got a couple of really athletic guys that are there. So I think that's part of the reason. And Fresno, while their defense has been absolutely A-plus phenomenal, they've played 3 straight sort of games. Well, they didn't have to travel for the one in between, but they started to wear down a little bit in their last game, and I think it kind of looked like a spot where you can fade them there. So I guess that would be the thought from me, but I don't have a bet on it per se. And then looking forward to the Ohio State game. As well, the Ohio State-Purdue game. I think there'll be a lot of points. I know it's already total's already moved.
I like the over in that game as well.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Talking about the Fresno State-New Mexico game, I like the favorite in the over in this one, the public.
The square play.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
Right on. Another big card of college football. Boy, we got through that one. There's a lot of. I wouldn't even say there's a lot we left on the table. But there's a lot of games that have implications that we left out. Ohio State, Purdue, a lot of those games.
It's a great week. It really is.
For sure. Another game I'm intrigued with that I won't dive into, I just want to watch it, is Memphis at Missouri. Another game where we could see a shootout, and that's going to be a fun one.
Very fun.
To be interested in. So, all right, quickly here, we got a couple seconds left in the podcast. Bold prediction for this weekend.
Bold for me would be, I've been thinking about this for a bit beforehand. I'm going to go with all the games in the MAC go under. So I'll look at all of those totals. Some of them are really low, and it's kind of weird and a bit of a janky feel to them.
But with the weather and all that, I think it's a sharp play. So
taking all of them. So throw a parlay in there for fun, what have you. We go bold over here.
Scratch the sniff.
That'd be a fun one. Parlay all the unders in the MAC. Bold prediction.
It's out there.
Bold prediction, one of the undefeateds go down, and I'm leaning towards Clemson with the upset.
Nice.
Wow. My bold prediction, we have 4 top 25 matchups, so I am going to predict that 6 top 25 teams go down this weekend, because obviously I get 4 free ones. So I'm going to predict also 2 others go down as well. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to predict 6 teams, lots of shaking and moving in the college football rankings this week, especially with the playoff seedings very close to coming out. So, again, we want to thank you guys for listening to our Picks and Chatter podcast, the NCAA edition. I want to thank Tony Johnson. I want to thank Token Tony. I want to thank 12 Ounce Sports Radio. Thank the guys over at ChaiPoker.com and VGK Pop Sockets, obviously. Listen to us tomorrow. We will be on again with our NFL edition. Give our picks for the NFL, the slate of games. That's always a fun one, especially with the season-long bet we have going on. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for coming across, or excuse me, coming across town and coming on the podcast. And it's certainly shaping up to be an awesome Saturday in college football. Games have already started. And for Token Tony, for Tony Johnson, I am Aaron. We'll catch you on the next one.